Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something real tonight. If a man acts a certain way, it means you are on his mind all day long, not just when it's convenient, not just when he's bored, but when he's busy, stressed, winning, losing, and trying to figure life out. A man can hide his feelings with his mouth, but his behavior, his behavior will always tell the truth. When a man thinks about you all day, his actions will always speak louder than his words, because men can say a lot of things and still mean very little, but what they do is where the truth lies. See, a man who is not thinking about you only shows up when it benefits him. He calls when he's bored, texts when he's lonely, and disappears when something else grabs his attention. But a man who has you on his mind all day moves differently. He doesn't wait for the perfect moment. He doesn't need a reason. You cross his mind, and that thought turns into action. You'll notice it in the way he checks in on you without being prompted. Not a forced message, not a dry A, but something that shows he was already thinking about you. Maybe he asks how your day went before you even tell him you had a long one. Maybe he sends you something that reminded him of you, a joke, a video, a memory. That's not random. That's his mind circling back to you again and again throughout the day. A man who thinks about you all day doesn't just talk when it's convenient. He fits you into his life. Even when he's busy, stressed, or dealing with his own responsibilities, he finds a moment. Because when a woman matters to a man, she becomes part of his mental routine. Just like work, food, rest, and goals, she's there, living rent-free in his thoughts. And let me tell you something important. Men are problem solvers by nature. When a man is thinking about you, he starts looking for ways to add value to your life. He listens differently. He pays attention to what you struggle with, what you need, what makes you feel safe. And even if he doesn't always have the perfect words, he tries to show up in ways that matter. That effort is not accidental. That effort is emotional investment. You'll also see it in how he reacts to your absence. When you don't talk for a while, he notices. When you're quieter than usual, he feels it. Because when a man is thinking about you all day, your presence becomes familiar to his emotional space. And when something changes, it disrupts him, not in a dramatic way, but in a subtle, meaningful one. Another thing people overlook is this: a man who thinks about you all day doesn't rush you. He doesn't pressure you to move faster than you're ready for. Why? Because he's already enjoying the connection. He's not afraid of patience because you're already occupying his mind. Time doesn't scare him when the woman he wants is already emotionally close. So if you ever find yourself wondering whether a man is really thinking about you, stop listening to what he promises and start watching what he does. Watch how often he shows up without being asked. Watch how he makes space for you in his life. Because when a man thinks about you all day, he doesn't just say it. He proves it quietly, consistently, and without needing applause. Consistency is the clearest sign of emotional investment. Because a man can be intense for a moment and still not be serious, but when his behavior stays steady over time, that's when you know his thoughts are tied to you. A man who isn't thinking about you all day shows up in waves. One day he's all in, the next day he's gone, and you're left trying to figure out what changed. Nothing changed. His attention was never anchored. But when a man truly thinks about you throughout the day, his presence doesn't fade when the excitement wears off. It stabilizes. You see, consistency doesn't mean constant communication. It means reliability. It means you don't have to guess whether you'll hear from him. You don't have to overanalyze silence or decode mixed signals. A consistent man creates emotional safety because his actions match his interest. He doesn't keep resetting the connection. He builds on it, and building takes intention. When a man thinks about you all day, he naturally keeps you included in his rhythm. He doesn't vanish when life gets busy. He adjusts. Even if he can't talk long, he lets you know you're still on his mind. That's not obligation. That's priority. Men make time for what matters, and they make excuses for what doesn't. Consistency is proof that you matter. Another thing about consistency is that it requires effort without immediate reward. A man who isn't emotionally invested wants quick results. He wants attention, validation, or access right away. But a man who thinks about you all day is willing to pour into the connection even when there's nothing in it for him at that moment. He texts just to check on you. He listens even when the conversation isn't exciting. He shows up even when he's tired. That kind of effort only comes from genuine interest. Pay attention to how a consistent man handles conflict or misunderstandings. A man who isn't thinking about you will pull away at the first sign of discomfort. He goes silent. He avoids. But a man who has you on his mind all day doesn't want distance. He wants resolution. Because when you matter to him, peace between you matters too. He doesn't want to lose the connection he's been investing in. Consistency also shows an emotional tone. His energy toward you doesn't swing wildly based on his mood. Even when he's stressed or distracted, there's still respect, care, and awareness in how he treats you. That's because when a man is thinking about you all day, you're not just an option in his free time. You're part of his emotional landscape. So when you're trying to understand how a man really feels, don't get distracted by grand gestures or dramatic moments. Look at what repeats. Look at what stays. Because consistency is the language of intention, and intention only comes from a man who can't stop thinking about you. Small, thoughtful gestures reveal constant presence in his mind, because when a man is truly thinking about you all day, it's not the big, dramatic moves that give him away, it's the quiet details. Anybody can do something grand once in a while, but it takes genuine emotional attachment to notice the little things and act on them consistently. A man who isn't thinking about you might compliment you in general ways or make empty promises, but a man who has you on his mind shows it through awareness. You'll notice he remembers things you didn't even realize you mentioned. Something you said in passing days or weeks ago suddenly comes back in conversation. He asks about it, follows up on it, or surprises you by remembering it when you least expect it. That's because when a man thinks about you all day, your words don't disappear, they stay with him. Men don't store details for women they aren't emotionally engaged with. Memory requires attention, and attention comes from interest. These small gestures often show up as thoughtfulness rather than romance. He checks if you ate. He asks how something important turned out. He notices when your energy is off and doesn't ignore it. These actions don't come from obligation. They come from emotional awareness. When a man's mind keeps returning to you, he becomes tuned in to your emotional state, even when you're not directly asking for support. A man who is thinking about you all day also looks for ways to make your life a little easier. He offers help without being asked. He gives advice when it's needed, not to control you, but because he genuinely wants to see you win. Even when he can't fix the problem, he stays present. That presence matters more than solutions. It shows that you're not just a thought in his head, but a priority in his heart. You'll also see it in how he communicates. He doesn't always send long messages, but what he says has meaning. There's intention behind his words. He doesn't rush conversations or brush you off. Even short exchanges feel connected because he's mentally engaged. A man who isn't thinking about you responds out of convenience. A man who is thinking about you responds with care. Another subtle sign is how he reacts when something reminds him of you. A place, a smell, a song, a situation suddenly brings you to his mind, and he feels the need to share that moment with you. That's emotional association. You've become linked to his everyday experiences. And when that happens, it means you occupy a steady place in his thoughts. So don't overlook the small things. Don't dismiss them as coincidence or politeness. Those thoughtful gestures are evidence of repetition in his mind. Because when a man thinks about you all day, he doesn't just think about you when he's alone or bored. He thinks about you in the middle of his life, and the small things are how that truth reveals itself. When a man is truly thinking about you all day, his natural instinct to protect begins to show itself in subtle but powerful ways. Protection doesn't always look like control or dominance. More often, it looks like concern, awareness, and a quiet sense of responsibility toward your well-being. A man who isn't emotionally invested won't think twice about your safety, your feelings, or your peace of mind. But when you occupy his thoughts, he becomes mindful of how the world affects you. You'll notice it in the way he checks on you, especially during moments when you could be vulnerable. He asks if you made it home safely, if you're okay after a long or stressful day, or if something that worried you earlier worked out. These questions aren't random or habitual. They come from a place of care. When a man thinks about you throughout the day, his mind naturally moves toward your comfort and security. This protective instinct also shows up emotionally. A man who is thinking about you all day is careful with your feelings. He doesn't intentionally say things just to get a reaction. He pays attention to how his words land. If he notices that something hurts you, it bothers him. Not because he wants to avoid responsibility, but because your emotional state matters to him. Men don't guard emotions they don't value. You'll also see protection in how he handles outside influences. If someone disrespects you, dismisses you, or makes you uncomfortable, it stays with him. Even if he doesn't react loudly or immediately, he registers it. A man who thinks about you all day doesn't ignore threats to your peace. He may not always confront them directly, but he adjusts his behavior to make sure you feel supported and safe. Another overlooked sign is how he tries to shield you from unnecessary stress. He doesn't dump his problems on you carelessly. He considers what you're already carrying. That doesn't mean he hides everything, but it means he respects your emotional capacity. When a man is thinking about you constantly, he doesn't want to add weight to your shoulders. He wants to lighten the load. His protective nature also reveals itself in guidance. He offers advice not to control your choices, but to help you avoid pain he's already experienced. He wants better for you. And even when you don't take his advice, he doesn't withdraw. He stays present because protection isn't about control, it's about care. When a man's heart is involved, his awareness expands. He notices risks, emotional shifts, and moments where you might need reassurance. That heightened awareness doesn't come from obligation. It comes from connection. And that connection is built by a woman who stays on his mind, not for a moment, but all day long. When a man is thinking about you all day, something very important starts to happen in his mind. He begins to place you in his future without forcing it, without announcing it, and sometimes without even realizing he's doing it. This is one of the strongest signs of emotional attachment because men don't casually imagine futures with women they don't value. A man can enjoy a moment with anyone, but he only plans tomorrow with the woman who lives in his thoughts. You'll hear it first in his language. He starts using words like, "Why, naturally." Not in a dramatic way, not to impress you, but casually, like it already makes sense. He talks about events coming up, places he wants to go, things he wants to do, and somehow you're already included. That inclusion isn't accidental. It's a reflection of how present you are in his mind. When a man thinks about you all day, his brain starts organizing life with you in it. Another sign is how he considers your schedule, your goals, and your reality. A man who isn't thinking about you will only plan around himself. His time, his needs, his convenience. But when you stay on his mind, he starts adjusting. He asks what works for you. He thinks ahead before making decisions. He doesn't just think about what he wants to do, but how it fits with you. That shift shows emotional maturity and genuine interest. You'll also notice that he doesn't keep you hidden in his future plans. He mentions you to people who matter to him. Maybe casually, maybe subtly, but you exist in his conversations. Not because he's trying to show you off, but because you've become part of his mental world. Men talk about what they care about. If you're in his thoughts all day, you'll eventually show up in his words to others. A man who thinks about you all day also becomes patient with timing. He's not in a rush to force outcomes because he's already emotionally connected. He understands that real connections grow, and he's willing to let things unfold naturally. That patience doesn't come from indifference. It comes from confidence. He's not afraid of losing you because he's investing in building something real. Another powerful sign is how he handles opportunities that could pull him away. When a man isn't emotionally invested, he makes choices without considering the impact on the relationship. But when you're on his mind all day, he pauses. He weighs options. He thinks about how decisions affect you, not because you demand it, but because you matter. That's emotional responsibility. You'll also see future thinking in how he supports your growth. A man who is thinking about you long term doesn't feel threatened by your dreams. He encourages them. He wants you strong, fulfilled, and confident. Why? Because in his mind, your success is part of his future too. A man doesn't invest emotionally in a woman he plans to outgrow. Even during disagreements or uncertainty, his future thinking shows. He doesn't walk away easily. He doesn't burn bridges over small issues. He wants solutions, not exits. Because when a man has already pictured you in his tomorrow, losing you feels like losing something he's already claimed emotionally. This kind of thinking doesn't happen overnight. It builds through constant mental presence, through moments where he wonders how you're doing, through times where something good or bad happens and you're the first person he thinks about. When that pattern repeats daily, the future naturally starts forming around you. So understand this clearly. When a man is thinking about you all day, you're no longer just part of his present. You're part of his vision. And men protect, plan, and commit to what they see as part of their future, even before they say it out loud. When a man is truly thinking about you all day, the most valuable thing he gives you is not words, gifts, or promises, but emotional attention. Attention is where a man's heart is. Men don't give sustained emotional focus to anything that doesn't matter deeply to them. They can multitask with work, friends, and distractions, but when it comes to emotional energy, they are very selective. So if a man is mentally present with you on a consistent basis, understand that you occupy an important place in his inner world. You can feel emotional attention before you can explain it. It shows up in the way he listens, not just waiting for his turn to talk, but actually absorbing what you say. He remembers how you felt, not just what you said. He notices changes in your tone, your mood, your energy. When a man thinks about you all day, he becomes emotionally tuned to you. That tuning doesn't happen by accident. It's the result of repeated thought and genuine care. A man who isn't thinking about you gives you surface level engagement. He hears you, but he doesn't feel you. Conversations stay light, disconnected, or self-centered. But a man who has you on his mind all day engages with depth. He asks follow-up questions. He wants to understand you, not just impress you. That desire to understand is emotional investment in its purest form. Emotional attention also shows in how he prioritizes your feelings during interaction. He doesn't dismiss your emotions or label you as too much. Even when he doesn't fully understand how you feel, he respects that your feelings are real. That respect comes from value. A man only protects the emotions of a woman he's emotionally attached to. Another powerful sign of emotional attention is responsiveness. Not instant replies every second, but thoughtful responses that show presence. He doesn't leave important messages hanging. He circles back to conversations. He doesn't make you feel invisible. When a man is thinking about you all day, he doesn't forget you emotionally. Even when life gets loud, you'll also notice emotional generosity. He shares parts of himself he doesn't share with everyone. His fears, his doubts, his past mistakes, his dreams. Men don't open emotional doors unless they feel safe and invested. If he's letting you see behind the curtain, it's because you've been living in his thoughts long enough to earn that trust. Emotional attention creates emotional protection. A man who is thinking about you all day is careful not to play with your heart. He doesn't intentionally confuse you, manipulate your emotions, or keep you guessing. He understands that emotional damage to you would feel like emotional damage to him. That awareness is love in its early stages. Even when he's wrong, emotional attention shows an accountability. He tries to fix things. He explains instead of disappearing. He acknowledges your feelings instead of dismissing them. That effort is exhausting for someone who doesn't care, but natural for someone who does. Because when you're on a man's mind all day, maintaining emotional connection becomes a priority. Emotional attention also shows in presence during hard moments. He doesn't vanish when things get uncomfortable. He stays even if he doesn't have the perfect words. His presence says, "You matter enough for me to sit in this with you." That kind of attention can't be faked for long. So understand this: when a man gives you emotional attention consistently, he is giving you his most valuable resource. Time can be replaced. Money can be earned again. But emotional energy is finite. And when a man chooses to spend that energy on you day after day, it means you are not just a thought that passes through his mind. You are a priority that lives there.